Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Madison. I make healthy living and lifestyle videos, and today I am doing my pregnancy recap video. During my first pregnancy, I actually did like IGTV videos documenting like each individual stage of pregnancy, but I just have not had time to do it this time with having a toddler. I have a 2-year-old named Juliet, and this is my second daughter who is due any day now. We are literally like days away from my due date. So I thought I would just do a full recap and cover my entire pregnancy all in one fell swoop. I do want to give a little bit of a trigger warning here because I am going to be talking a little bit about prenatal and postpartum depression. So if you're sensitive to either of those topics, like feel free to skip this video, go watch one of my other videos. But I am going to be talking a little bit about that because that's something I definitely experienced extensively during this pregnancy and a little bit during my last pregnancy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. So starting off with my first trimester, I found out I was pregnant in like late June, early July. So we found out really, really early. We were trying for this baby, so we were expecting to get pregnant, hoping to get pregnant. So we had been trying for maybe a month tops. We found out we were pregnant and we were super, super excited. And I found out about 4 weeks and got confirmation. And then around 8 weeks is when I started having like the exhaustion and actually a little bit of morning sickness this time. So I didn't experience morning sickness with my first pregnancy, and this one started off with more just like, it started around 8 weeks and it started with more of just like food aversion, not feeling like having a great appetite, and then I did start to just experience a little bit of nausea. It would normally hit me at different times during the day, so sometimes it would be in the morning where like coffee just didn't taste good. Other times it would be like toward the end of the day where I should have eaten and then I didn't, and then I started to feel nauseous. So I definitely noticed for me, if I wasn't eating, I like would feel nauseous. So I had to make sure I was like eating throughout the day or snacking throughout the day, and that really helped. I also noticed during the first trimester, this is when like, especially when you're like so exhausted, which I definitely remember in my first pregnancy, but like this time it was like a new level having a toddler. I was so exhausted and so fatigued. It was just like insane. Like, they're literally not joking when people say they're like, it just sucks the life out of you. That's exactly how I felt. So I was very, very exhausted for like the whole first trimester, basically like 8 weeks up until about 15 weeks. I experienced like the morning sickness during that time, the crazy fatigue, and just really, really exhausted. I also started to notice the first kind of symptoms of prenatal or like pregnancy depression, which is something I didn't experience with my first pregnancy. So, and this could have just been because of the exhaustion, the hormones. I don't really know. I did talk to my doctor a little bit about it, but we found it just manageable just by like, you know, talking about it. And, you know, I didn't really take anything for it or anything like that. I just kind of like let myself feel the feelings for the most part. So I did experience a little bit of that, but the big difference between what I noticed in this pregnancy that was like depression-like symptoms versus just like typical fatigue symptoms is even on the days I did have energy, because I had, especially toward the back half of the first trimester into the second trimester, I noticed that like the things that used to interest me just stopped interesting me, and I didn't have any desire to do anything that normally I like to do. So for instance, love to exercise, I love to be outside, I really love to clean. I'm kind of one of those people that like finds cleaning therapeutic, likes to have a clean space, likes to have a clean house, and I just found that like I didn't have any interest in those things. Had a hard time playing with my daughter and having like quality time with her. So all those things were really concerning, but also I kind of knew once I started doing some research on prenatal depression, like the depression that starts during pregnancy, that this is like very common, especially if you experienced postpartum depression, which I did with my first pregnancy. So overall, that's kind of how I felt during the first trimester as far as the depressive symptoms go. So overall, the first trimester is just really difficult in general. It was really fun getting to tell my family. It was really fun getting to tell my husband. I'll link that video up here of me telling him. That was really, really fun. And we did get to do like an ultrasound. My first appointment wasn't until like 11 weeks, which was like late compared to my first pregnancy. My first pregnancy, we got in like and had an ultrasound at like 6 weeks. So this time I didn't even like get to hear the heartbeat until 11 weeks, which was weird. And around 11 weeks is when I also started feeling baby kicks, which was really, really fun. I felt Juliet move at 11 weeks as well. So that was really, really fun getting to do that. We did like our announcement and all of that. It was very, very fun. So overall, it was like a really good time for us as far as like me being like as exhausted as I was and having these kind of like, you know, deep emotions and everything that I was feeling during that time, it was like a good time because we were still around like a lot of our family. It was still warm outside. I'm very glad that I experienced that during the summer and was able to like, you know, experience that during the summer versus the winter, because I definitely get like seasonal depression as well. So the winter has been very, very tough. So I'll talk a little bit about that when I get into the third trimester. But other than that, like I didn't really experience any like cravings or massive food aversions. Coffee just didn't kind of taste great. So I would typically only drink like maybe a cup, which normally I'm a caffeine addict. And I also just kind of like didn't really want anything except like chicken nuggets. Chicken nuggets were like the only thing that sounded good to me, and sweets. Like I liked chocolate or like popcorn with chocolate in it, or just anything with like kind of a sweet taste to it, like cake, carbs, things like that. That's pretty much all I was into. It was like chicken nuggets, fries, and then like cake. That was basically it. The other thing that was crazy about this pregnancy is I popped so early. I literally was not fitting in clothes at 11 weeks, where my bump just like immediately came in, and I literally went to an ultrasound at 12 weeks, and he was like, how far along are you? And I was like, I'm 12 weeks. And he goes, you're big for 12 weeks. And I was like, either this baby is measuring really big, or maybe I just popped early. Come to find out, I just popped early. Like I guess it's really common in your second pregnancy to be bigger right away, and I definitely was. So for me, I popped very, very early. Last pregnancy, I wore like normal clothes until like into the second trimester, and then I jumped into maternity clothes. And this time I literally couldn't wear anything tight. Like I immediately had to jump into, you know, maternity clothes very, very early. Brought everything out like very early in the first trimester. So that was kind of fun because I did feel like I was showing really early. We literally had to tell people pretty quickly. We were kind of going back and forth on when to tell people, and we told people pretty quick, like 9 to 12 weeks is when we started telling people, because I was showing and it was obvious. And I actually had a couple people that were like, are you pregnant? And I was like, yes. And like, because I was showing so early, which was very, very fun. So it's been fun having like the bump longer this time, because that's one thing I missed so much after Juliet came, was I just missed having the bump. I missed feeling the kicks, missed having my belly. So that's one of those things that this time I was loving, that I got to enjoy for a little bit longer than normal. Okay, so moving on to the second trimester. So the second trimester was probably the most different this time versus last time. So I think part of it was because I was so exhausted during the first trimester, and because I had morning sickness, which I did not have during my first pregnancy. I also didn't get as bad of headaches this time as I did during my last pregnancy. I did get some, but I noticed that as long as I kept my water intake up, I was able to curb those and didn't have to have like these, you know, horrible headaches like I did during my first pregnancy. My first pregnancy, I was just like incapacitated with these headaches that I would get pretty regularly. But this time, because I was drinking more water, I made a habit to drink a lot more water. I got myself like a really huge iron flask and was just drinking water like a crazy person and making sure I stayed on it. That seemed to help take care of headaches. So I only got maybe like 3 or 4 headaches throughout the whole pregnancy, and most of them were in the first into second trimester. The biggest difference with the second trimester that I noticed this time was the lack of energy. So normally you hit your second trimester and you just feel this like burst of energy where you start feeling better and you want to nest and you want to clean and you want to do like all things, and that's definitely what I experienced with my first pregnancy. And this time I did not experience that. The energy just never came. I had a few days here and there that I felt like, oh, okay, like I woke up early, kind of got a routine going, but it just never happened. Like I never felt like I got like that second trimester buzz that you get, that you just are like wanting to do all the things. And I very much had it during my first pregnancy. So that was a little bit of a bummer. I kept expecting it to come and it just never did. I also still felt sick until about like 15 to 16 weeks. And then it was finally like where I was like, okay, I don't feel sick anymore. I'm not having nausea anymore. I never actually got sick throughout the whole pregnancy, which was good. I kind of had that nausea from like 8 weeks until like 15, 16 weeks. So it was a pretty long time. And then like into the second trimester, I just never got that huge burst of energy. I definitely felt better, but didn't like have the surge that I did during my first pregnancy. My first pregnancy, I felt like a machine. Like I could just go all day and I could just do all the things I wanted to clean, I wanted to work, I just was like, my brain was clear. I felt like I was just able to get all the stuff done, and this time I just didn't, and I don't really know why. It was also just kind of a stressful time for us because I had been like so sick during the first few months. It just felt like I was really behind on the housework. I was really behind on like work for my day job and stuff like that. And so it was a very like stressful period, the second trimester was, where I felt like I was kind of just playing catch up a lot, and then also trying to spend quality time with my daughter. I also noticed that like the postpartum depression symptoms, like the early postpartum, you know, prenatal depression symptoms weren't as bad during that time, but I definitely felt more stressed. The other thing that started during the second trimester was pain. So I started having back pain and pelvis pain and like feet pain, which I had really bad feet pain during my first pregnancy, and it came out of nowhere where all of a sudden it was like I could barely walk. Like my feet hurt so bad, and it wasn't like they were swollen. It was like basically what my doctor assumed it was is because of like the amount of hormones going through your body that's helping like your muscles relax and stretch to make room for baby. And that goes through your whole body, so it doesn't like stop at just like your uterus and your stomach. It's like going through your whole body. So basically your just joints are a little bit looser, and because I had never been pregnant before, like my feet just like hurt like crazy, where it just felt like my feet were just like stretching. I know that sounds really weird, but it just like felt like the bones were being pulled apart. Really, really painful. And I experienced that a little bit this time, but not as bad. This time it was more my pelvis. So as baby grew, I literally just felt like my pelvis was being like broken in half, and I was like, is this normal? And they were like, yeah, and it gets worse every pregnancy. So love that for me. But basically I experienced that the entire second trimester. So it started around like maybe 20 weeks and did not stop, where I just had really intense pelvic pain. It only just now has subsided a little bit, and I think the only reason for that is I think that maybe because baby is engaged and she's low, that's why. Like, I don't really know exactly, but or maybe I've just adjusted to it. I have been getting adjusted regularly by my chiropractor. I started doing that with Juliet, and it was so helpful. Like that really was the only thing that relieved the pain, because I was very uncomfortable during the third trimester with Juliet. Not really all during the second trimester, it more hit during the third trimester with her, but this time it started in the second trimester and I was like so uncomfortable right away. So adjustments really helped. I go about every 2 weeks, and now I'm going once a week toward the end of pregnancy. One thing that I did notice about the second trimester, which I think was really good, is instead of feeling like I had to do all the things, I definitely felt like a shift where I felt more inclined to take care of myself as opposed to like do all of the things. So I definitely I was hoping that energy was going to come back to where I could like, you know, take care of the house and do, you know, all the things that I had planned on doing with that energy I thought was coming. But instead that just didn't really happen. And what I found myself doing a lot more of was like prioritizing exercise, prioritize spending time with my daughter. And that was really good. And with my husband, like we kind of just really focused on us and spending time together. We went on a little bit of a baby moon to go see family out in North Carolina. That was really fun. And I just kind of noticed that I definitely wanted to exercise more and eat healthier. So I definitely ate healthier during this pregnancy than I did with Juliet. Still didn't have a super big appetite for anything in particular and no real cravings, but the food aversions went away to where I was able to eat pretty much anything and nothing sounded bad anymore. And I wasn't like, oh, I have to only eat chicken nuggets. Chicken nuggets still sound good, like, but when don't think chicken nuggets sound good? So it was kind of like I moved to kind of focusing on eating healthy now that I felt better. So I was doing a lot of green smoothies, I was exercising a lot more, and all of that felt really good, and it felt great to like do that during the second trimester. So lots of walks, lots of activity. We found out the gender during the second trimester, which was so much fun, so exciting, and it was really fun getting to include Juliet in that and have her kind of announce it to us, which was fun. But yeah, overall, like the second trimester just felt like kind of like a blur of like everything that happened. Another weird thing that I had as far as pain goes during the second trimester that I did not experience with Juliet was like carpal tunnel pain, or I don't even know if that's exactly what it was, but basically like my joints flared up. And so anytime I was like, it happened like 2 or 3 times throughout the pregnancy, mainly in the second and third trimester, where basically my wrists would flare up and it would be excruciating to like bend my wrist at all. And just like super inflamed. I actually had an ultrasound done on my wrist to make sure like nothing was wrong, but basically the most we could find out is that it was basically just inflammation from like hormones and all sorts of stuff. So really, really annoying. It lasted maybe like a couple of days to like a week. It flared up the worst when we were on vacation in North Carolina. And I literally could barely move my wrist. And anytime Juliet would touch it or anything, it was like I broke my wrist. It was so painful. Really similar to kind of like the foot pain I was talking about, where I had just like, I could barely walk. It was kind of like that. And except in my wrist. Very, very weird. Typing was really painful. I ended up just kind of like having it wrapped for a bit, icing it. And then finally it just kind of like subsided and went away, and now they're both fine. So I don't really know what that was. I don't know why that happened, other than just like inflammation, which is just annoying. But a couple other weird symptoms I noticed during the first trimester. I had like a crazy sneezing fit, which was one of the like key signs that I was pregnant, because I had that with Juliet too, where I just literally could not stop sneezing. I thought I was getting sick, never got sick. It literally was just like sneezing and congestion a ton all during the first trimester. Finally subsided and kind of went away during the second trimester. And then in the second trimester, I noticed like having to pee all the time, like having to get up every night. It started kind of late in the first trimester and then carried over pretty much the entire second trimester, where I'd have to get up to pee all the time in the middle of the night, which I did not experience during my first pregnancy. Could have also been that I was drinking like a lot more water, so it was like, you know, kind of going through a little bit faster. But thought that was kind of interesting, that like how often I had to get up versus the first pregnancy. I didn't have to do that as much. I also have gotten super, super bad allergies both pregnancies now. So I got them kind of in the summer with Juliet, and then they went away, and then this time, and then I got them very bad after I had her in the spring, and then I've had them super, super bad this spring. So it started in February and it's just been carrying through, so that's why I sound a little bit congested. Kept thinking I might be getting sick, and it just like never turned into anything. It's just been allergies, which is very, very annoying. So the big things that have been helping with that is just doing like eucalyptus, or I've been using like nasal spray. My doctor approved me to take Benadryl, so I sometimes take Benadryl if it's really bad, but for the most part it's bad at night, and if we go for like a long walk or something like that, where like the allergens are really in the air. So one thing that started again early this pregnancy was that pelvic pain, and this time it was very much more like on my actual like pelvis. Last time it was more like almost like a pulled groin muscle or something. That's more what it felt like, and it was really low. It was like sciatic to like groin pain, like around that area, whereas this time it's been like in the front of my body and very much like on my pelvis. And it was the entire second trimester, so to the point where it was hard to roll over at night, made it very difficult to sleep. So sleep has been really, really bad pretty much this whole pregnancy, which has been hard. I did end up investing in a I can't remember the name of the company. I think it's called Baby Bum or Baby Bump or something like that. I'll put it up here on the screen, but I got this pillow that I saw on Instagram, and it's been a game changer. I'm really, really happy with it. So glad I bought it. And also came with like a little knee pillow. Had like a wedge pillow that I got. I think it was from, I can't remember the name of the brand either. I think it's from just Boppy, like the brand that makes like the nursing pillows. But I got this wedge pillow during my first pregnancy that just kind of slides under your bump to help you just have some support there so your back's not twisting, because during my last pregnancy my rhomboids really, really hurt the entire second to third trimester, where my back just was in crazy pain all the time. And this time I definitely experienced that too, but I also noticed like I was rolling over still, and the wedge pillow was not stopping me from rolling over onto my back, and like on my back was really uncomfortable. So which you're not supposed to do that anyway, but like when I would, it would wake me up, and so I wasn't getting good sleep. It was just like a whole thing. So I got this pillow, really, really love it. It's adjustable for like kind of like fitting to your body, but it basically stops you from rolling over. It's a wedge on each side, and it stops you from rolling over, and I love it. So I'm really, really glad I invested in that, because it's been so, so good. I'm not using it very much anymore, just because the bump is so big that I don't feel like I need it, and I'm not rolling over onto my back as much. So I haven't been using it just the last like maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but I used it pretty much the entire like second trimester into like the mid of the third trimester. Another thing that's been different about this pregnancy, which I think is crazy, is this baby is somehow more active than Juliet was. And Juliet was so active during pregnancy that like she moved so much all the time. Like, it was crazy how active she was. This baby, I think, has topped her as far as being active. She moves constantly. She's just like kicking 24/7. It's crazy. I have experienced lightning crotch, which was a first. I had not experienced that before. It is not fun, but it's basically where baby's like kicking on your cervix, and it's very painful. But she did that. She moves constantly. It's literally crazy. What also was different about this pregnancy is during my first pregnancy, I found out I had polyhydramnios, which is a condition where basically there's just extra fluid in the sac where the baby is, and so the baby can move from breech to transverse to head down, and it can be an issue as far as like going into labor naturally, because the cord can slip out because there's so much fluid. It's kind of like a cord going down a drain. So I ended up getting induced during my last pregnancy because of that, to avoid that from happening. And this time I haven't had that condition, so they've been keeping tabs on it, never came up. So this baby has been so different because I can literally feel where she is all the time. And with Juliet, there was so much water and I was so swollen, like I didn't know any different, but like it's crazy how less swollen I am during this pregnancy, how much smaller my bump is, even though I feel bigger because she's tighter in there. It's very, very different. So jumping into the third trimester, I definitely feel like the third trimester was where I finally started having that energy come back. And I think a big portion of like why I had such like low energy during the second trimester is it was kind of in like the autumn, like going into Christmas season, which is just busy and there's just a lot going on. And so I think I didn't feel as much of the like wanting to hustle as I did during the summer when I had my second trimester in the summer last time. So this time I definitely felt just like the third trimester really hit hard with like the energy boost. I felt a lot more energy, felt like I wanted to do all the things, wanted to get everything done. And so, but it was definitely still difficult because of how uncomfortable I've been. So this pregnancy has just been a lot more physically challenging, where my body really hurts, my pelvis hurts, sleep has been really non-existent, just really, really difficult. So I've been taking like melatonin to try to like sleep at night and things like that. Had a lot of allergies, especially with like spring coming around. I've been having a lot of allergies, so like a lot of congestion and things like that. So that's just been very tiring. Also, just having a toddler is just like so different. Having, you know, when you're in your first pregnancy, you have all this time to just like clean and like do things, and this time I'm juggling her schedule and juggling my schedule, and so it's really hard to get anything done. I'm currently making a pregnancy admin video that might be up by the time you see this one. It might not be, but currently like that's literally taking me so long, and I'm getting all the like last minute things done for baby because it's just I have not had time to do it. Like it's literally been so hard to do it between work and taking care of Juliet and taking care of our house and stuff, so it's just hard to get all those things done. Some other things I've experienced during the third trimester is I definitely feel like my appetite has kind of gone away, which I think is interesting. I feel like I had a really big appetite during the second trimester where I was really hungry, wanted to eat a lot. I've still gained a good amount of weight. I'm at 150 right now, and I'm normally around like 120 to 125, which this is about what I gained with Juliet as well by the end of the pregnancy. But I just don't feel as hungry anymore, and I'll have like, I still kind of just feel snacky and like just wanting to like snack, but I don't actually want anything substantial. So I am trying to like, when I'm eating, I'm trying to eat things like, you know, salads and green smoothies and things like that, things that I know are going to have like a lot of nutrients. But sometimes I'm literally like, all I feel like having is like a protein bar, and so that's very weird, I feel like, especially because you'd think you'd be really hungry toward the end, but for some reason I'm just not. Third trimester also has been where I've definitely experienced the most postpartum depression symptoms, which it is really typical. Like 1 in 2 women who have postpartum depression experience it before the pregnancy ends. So I definitely experienced this with my first pregnancy as well. I didn't know that's what it was though. I thought I was just emotional. I thought there was a lot going on and I was about to have a baby, and I thought it was just that. I also had this condition that was like kind of giving us a lot of stress, as far as we thought, you know, I might have to have a C-section, I might have to get induced early. There were just all these unknowns that we were really stressed about. So I thought it was just that. And this time it's been totally different as far as my symptoms go. So last time I had a lot more like anger and overwhelm, and it came out in the form of like anger and rage and then like crying. This time it's been a lot more just emotional, where I will like, nothing will be wrong, and I just kind of have a day where I'm just like, I feel just sad, and I literally just like cry all day long, or I'll cry for like a good 30 minutes, like hard crying, and then I'll be fine. And it's very, very weird as far as the symptoms go. And it is really hard to like snap myself out of the moods when they come. It's not every single day. It was for a little while where it was almost every day. And that's when I finally started talking to my doctor about it, because I was like, this is definitely seeming like it's worse than it was last time. And I just felt like a lot more out of control of my emotions, where they just felt like they were coming on like so hard and so fast all the time, where I couldn't keep up. I was like, I can't function this way. I was like, I'll be fine, and then I'm bawling my eyes out, or I'm screaming, or I'm like laying in bed depressed. Like I was just like, it just like, and it still happens where I'll have like days where I'm like totally fine most of the day, and then the end of the day will come where I like put the baby down and I'll just sit in bed and cry. Like it's very, very strange, like as far as the feelings go. So, and the other thing that I noticed with this one is I feel like I know what to expect as far as labor and all of that goes, but this is very different because last time I got induced, so I didn't ever go into labor naturally. I was at the hospital as soon as I had like my first contraction. We were already at the hospital, like hooked up to all the machines and stuff like that. So I have been doing a little bit of research though, and one thing I noticed that I think has been contributing for me, and hopefully someone else finds this helpful, is if you did have like a traumatic birth where, you know, your birth didn't go according to plan, or it was just like really stressful. We had like a few things that made my birth traumatic for me, even though like I wouldn't consider it like a big T trauma. I'd consider it more of a like little T trauma, but still traumatic nonetheless. Those things can really play into the stress and the postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety you're feeling going into your next pregnancy. So I didn't know that, and I didn't ever consider my birth traumatic in that way, but I did start having flashbacks where I was having flashbacks of just the stress of the day and being at the hospital and not being able to breathe, and like just things like that that were really traumatic. I started worrying about her having to go to the NICU, because Juliet almost had to go to the NICU, and I was like, what if I have to get my water broken? I started having like flashbacks about getting a catheter, which was like really like the most traumatic part for me, and just different things like that that were like really stressful in that time, and I hadn't really thought about them a whole lot since having her. But now getting closer into that third trimester, they started coming back up. So I definitely feel like if, you know, you're someone who experienced like a stressful birth or a traumatic birth, like definitely, you know, seek counseling and, you know, work through those things before going into your next birth, because, and that's something I'm doing, is I'm meeting with like a counselor and talking about it and like kind of working through how I'm feeling, talking to a lot of like close friends about it and my experience, and really trying to bring light to it and not just like let it stew in my head, just because I think that is so important to kind of process how your first birth was in order to go into your next birth with a clear head and be able to like handle it, because birth is such a mind game. It's such a like mind over matter situation. So for me, I really didn't feel prepared to do birth again. That's what it felt like, is I just kept saying, I was like, I don't feel ready to do this again. I don't feel ready to push a baby out again, even though I know that's how this ends, is like, I know I have to push a baby out at the end of this, but like, I just didn't feel prepared for it. So that was contribute to a lot of the postpartum depression, anxiety I've been feeling, I think. And then also just knowing how much postpartum depression I had during my first pregnancy. I felt a lot of postpartum rage, felt a lot of resentment toward my husband. I just felt like all of these kind of heavy things in the first 6-ish months of Juliet being born, even though I like adored her and like loved spending time with her and was like so happy to be a mom. I definitely experienced that like other dark side of like the postpartum period as well. So I think all those things contributed to how I've been feeling during the third trimester, because it's definitely been the most emotional, stressful part of the pregnancy so far, has been this time. The first 2 trimesters felt very much like things were just happening so fast. I was like, this is going by so quickly. Even when I was not feeling good, I was like, this is flying by. Like, I cannot believe how fast this is going. And then third trimester hit, and I started feeling very, very anxious about labor and having a second kid and having 2 kids, you know, a toddler and a newborn, and just like thinking about work and thinking about, you know, taking care of my home and just doing all these things, trying to take care of myself. All of that felt like so heavy that I think that's what's contributed to a lot of what I've been feeling, on top of like all the hormonal changes that, you know, my body's been going through. So that's been my experience so far. I feel like this is kind of a downer video. I honestly have enjoyed this pregnancy. I really have. Like, I've loved having all the kicks. I've been loving feeling, you know, her move all the time. She's so active this time. I can literally like see her, you know, kick out her feet and stuff, because like there's not as much water in there this time. So I can like see all of the movements and stuff way more than I could with Juliet. So that's been so much fun. I'm so glad that like, and Juliet's been so cute. Like, she wants to hug my belly like every single day. It's so cute how like she's starting to get excited, and I think all of that has just been like so magical. But I think it's also just important to talk about, like, you know, pregnancy is so hard, and especially when you have other kids, you know, that you're taking care of and stuff. Like, this can be the experience for a lot of people, or even if you don't have other kids. I mean, I had a postpartum depression with my first without having any other kids to take care of. So it's like, I think it's just been, you know, adjusted more this time because of having Juliet too. That's one more thing I wanted to touch on with Juliet, has been, I've noticed a change in her too. She's been a lot more clingy. She just turned 2 in December, so she's like 2 and 3 months right now, and she's been a lot more clingy. She's had a lot more like sleep things, which have not been as big of an issue in the last like 9 months. Basically, she started sleeping through the night right around the time I got pregnant, but she has started having just where she's like a lot more clingy, really wants to cuddle, wants to be with me and Daniel, wants us all together. She doesn't really like to be in environments that she's not familiar with. For instance, we took her to like a daddy-daughter dance. She like immediately wanted to leave. Like, she did not want to be there. She just was like very uncomfortable, like just wanted us together, like didn't want me to leave her side. And she's not normally that clingy. She's very comfortable going and being with Daniel alone and stuff like that. So just different things like that. She's had a hard time letting other people put her down for naps or bedtime or anything. She pretty much only wants me to do those things. So I think all of those definitely are factors of this pregnancy too, of her just knowing things are changing, things are adjusting. She's also been trying to nurse again, which is really funny. Like, she stopped nursing in like early December, and now she's trying to nurse again, and I'm like, we're not doing that. But yeah, just weird things like that you're kind of like, I don't know what that's about exactly, but I know it definitely is contributing like from this pregnancy, and maybe even how I'm feeling, you know, just being in sync with her and stuff. So that's just something noteworthy as well, that I think if you have other kids, knowing like this is an adjustment for them too, and also for your spouse. Like, it's just like all of this is like so new, because you haven't had a second baby before. You haven't had to do this like with balancing your toddler and another baby. You've done it, you know, starting from scratch with having no expectations, but now you have expectations, and so it is a new experience, even though it's familiar, if that makes sense. I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and make sure you subscribe for my other videos. I have a lot of other great content coming out very shortly, and this baby should be here any day now, which is really, really fun. So I'll have a few videos going up after she's born and everything like that. But I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Oh my love, you're such a fragile thing.